Do you ever feel stuck in the rat race? Life doesn't have to be that way if you're willing to put in the work. In Bigger Vision, Chris Garrison helps you discover the keys to abundance, freedom, and personal growth that let you live the life of your dreams. And now, here's your host, Chris Garrison.
Welcome, everybody. It's Chris Garrison. You've made it to the Bigger Vision podcast. I appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to this content. I hope that, and I do believe that you will walk away with valuable knowledge, tips, tricks, maybe just reminders so that you will go forth and prosper in the future. I've really had matter of fact, let me step back. I've had a conversation with a good buddy today. His wife and my wife and us went out. We had brunch. He was asking me, he's a small business owner, entrepreneur, and does well. And he was asking me about real estate. Came to the point to where he was wanting to get in real estate just because he wanted big punches of extra income. And he didn't want rentals. He was looking more for the flip wholesaling type process. And my comment was, well, there's three ways to get into real estate. One is you find the deal. The other one is you operate it, or whether it's buy and hold, you do the operate with the value add, or if it's a flip, you're doing that project management. And then the third way is you're bringing the money to the table because the capital has to be there to be able to purchase. So whether you're going to the bank, you're bringing your own personal money, you're gathering multiple people's money together to make one large lump sum called private money. Whatever the case is, you got to have some money to be able to close the deal. So those are the three ways to get into it. But as we got to speaking, I began to ask him questions about his personal business and began to give him advice, in my opinion, of what's worked for me in my business and what he really should focus on. And it made me think about something that I've been really mentally contemplating over the last couple of weeks, because I find myself moving throughout my day with a lot of distractions. Those distractions can come from my team members coming and asking questions. It mainly, though, comes from me doing a task, thinking of another task I need to do, and me jumping on that task to do it while I had it in thought. And what it does is it breaks my rhythm as I'm moving on that current task to jump onto a new task, even though they both need to be done. And if I do that multiple times a day, now I've not been as efficient in completing something. And I also walk away feeling less fulfilled because now I didn't accomplish, therefore I didn't hit that win. You've heard me talk about waking up in the morning and accomplishing something so that you rack up these small wins, because these small wins mount up to large wins. And more importantly, they give you confidence in yourself to go tackle those out of your comfort zone desires and passions. And that's the problem with letting your focus be broke by other things that also are requiring your attention. So I began to think, how can I fix that? Because as an entrepreneur, you've probably heard the shiny object syndrome, and we're constantly looking for opportunity. If it's opportunity, our eyebrows rise and our heads turn like a dog that sees a squirrel. And all of a sudden, we're derailed onto something else, and we never became masters of what we were currently focusing on. You've probably heard me say this as well. Bruce Lee said he doesn't fear the man that knows 1,000 kicks, but he fears the man that has practiced one kick 1,000 times. And that's just simply saying that the more you do something and the more you focus on, the more specialized you will be and the more value you will bring. You will be the most valuable person in the room on that subject. That will be your unique ability. And when we sit here and jump from subject to subject, from opportunity to opportunity, we diminish our ability to be great at that one thing. Now, it doesn't mean you can't jump from multiple businesses and investments and whatnot, because maybe your unique ability is identifying a true deal and opportunity and plugging someone in to manage and operate that. We've got to decide and analyze, look inside ourselves and see, what am I great at? What do I love doing? And what do I find easy to do? because what you're finding easy to do is your unique ability. What you find easy to do is the thing that you need to put more focus on and stop trying to constantly better yourself in the areas that you're not that great at. This pulls in the who, not how mentality, because now you can find someone that's great at your weakness and let them take over that, and you will go much further down the road. I love this little saying I heard a friend of mine in one of my other mastermind groups say one time. First time I'd ever heard it, and then I started hearing it in other areas. It's funny how that happens. When you take notice of something, you start seeing it all the time. But he said, if you want to run fast, you run alone. But if you want to run far, you run together. And I truly believe that is one of the most accurate statements I've ever heard, because if you will sit there and plug other people in and have that who, not how mentality, and you will find somebody that's great at this subject and find somebody that's great at this subject, and you come in where you're great at, now you've got a fantastic team, a team of A players, and you will be able to go much farther, much faster as well, compared to saying, I'm the Lone Ranger and I'm going to do it all myself because I can do it great and I don't want to share anything. And really, that's what it boils down to. The majority of the time, you don't want to share. You're afraid that you're going to miss out because your mind is not at the level that it should be in thinking that there is more by keeping less. I'm going to say that again. There's more by keeping less. You can have more if you divide up some of what you currently have so that you can move faster and further down the road, and others will be there. There's power in community. There's power in the tribe and the network. And when you begin to bring others with you that are great at what they do, then you are able to also have accountability and positive influence that pushes you to be better at what your speciality is. And so I began to talk to my friend, and I started asking, I said, man, instead of learning, and he's older than I am, I said, instead of learning a new craft, because you're going to have to learn a new craft if you don't have the money piece. So if you don't have the money piece and you're not just sitting there with bags waiting to put it into an asset, then you've got to learn a new skill set. But right now, you've already got an asset that can still grow. So I was like, tell me about your team. Tell me about your work volume. And the team was struggling. His growth in his team was struggling, and he had work volume that was sitting there waiting. And he is very much involved in the day-to-day, and that's what he doesn't prefer, because he is older and wants to start enjoying life more and not so much having to trade his time for money, because that's exactly what he's still doing by still being on the service truck. And I said, well, what are you paying your guys? And then he told me, and I said, it's not enough. And then he began to try to say, well, that's all that he can afford. And I said, you need to raise your prices if that's the case. You're flooded with work, so let's raise your prices to skim some of that work off. Go ahead and increase them 50% and see what kind of kickback. Give it 7 days. If you don't book any jobs, then you know you went too high. Then you can pull back to 25% and make sure that you're not missing all the jobs. You want to miss some jobs because every customer is not your customer. You got to decide who you want to be. I know for me as a customer, I am a customer the companies want because I see value. I notice value. I don't care what the price is. Are you giving me what I need, and is it making my life better? Is it taking stress away? Is it taking responsibility away? Is it making me feel good? If you're bringing a level of value that I don't have to oversee and I don't have to worry about, I just know that, hey, I need this. You say, got it taken care of. And then I don't have to hear from you again. A bill comes in the paper, or maybe I just gave you a credit card and you paid it, whatever. But it's done. The transaction's over with. And in service-based industries, most of the time, services are not services that people enjoy having to pay for. So if you make them where they are seamless and effortless for the buyer, then you're going to be adding much more value and you'll be able to charge more. So I said, increase it 50%, man. Get your coupon shoppers off of your customer list. And now you don't have to increase your staff and have that issue that you're saying and trying to hire new staff and find qualified individuals that actually want to work. You don't have that issue anymore because now you're making more money with the same amount of staff. And I'm going to tell you what else. Your jobs are also going to be better jobs because those that are willing to pay more, they have more. Therefore, they have a better maintenance plan, and you will be there more often, more frequently. And also, it will be less work because you are there more frequently. And the person that was servicing them before you was there more frequently. It's not always greener on the other side. And we so often get caught up in the weeds of our day to day, and we need fresh influence. We need a fresh voice. We need fresh eyes to sit there and push and promote us to rethink the way we've been doing our day to day. A new perspective is what we need. And you see it quite often. I do it myself. Entrepreneurs, it's not only entrepreneurs, this is just life in general, even in our day-to-day home life and whatnot. We get in these routines instead of thinking out of the box, and we get trapped. But when we get exposed to something different than what we do, it turns light bulbs on for us so that we began to think, oh, I would like to do that. We could do it this way and it would be even better. That's why I hire coaches, because I sit there and they can hear me vent. They can hear me brag. They're there to listen to me and I'm there to listen to them. And they ask me questions that provoke new thoughts. Well, why do you want to do this? Well, you said you want this, so how do you plan on going about that? It's real easy to talk about what you want, and it's real easy to be very stressed and full of anxiety in the want to, but actually putting a plan of action together a lot of times is difficult, I find, unless we've got somebody provoking us with questions. And when we get provoked with questions, it makes our mind work because now we have to answer. Some of the best teachers I've set underneath on educational purposes has been the ones that asked me why. When I gave an answer to a question, they challenged my answer, and it really made me I had to find out, why did I choose that? Did I just choose that because that just seemed like the right thing to do? Or did I have substantial backing facts that really made that answer a good answer? But instead of us putting that thought process, we let ourselves get distracted by new ideas because we love to sit in the thought process of it instead of the action taking process. There's grit that has to be pulled into your life to walk the actions. You actually have to do something to create something. You can sit there and think about it, and there does take thinking, it does take planning, but if you never put the action, you'll never see a change. When I was the bottleneck and I wanted to grow my business, the passion was inside of me greatly, but I felt stressed and overwhelmed and never could shake the thought of how do I grow? It was like this constant, it's like I was leaned against a brick wall, could not see on the other side of it, but knew the other side was my destiny. And as soon as I began to ask for help, that I started having questions come at me like, what is the ideal team member since you say that you don't have the staff that you need? Where are you trying to go? How many jobs does it take for you to have to reach that revenue? How many staff members does it take to service that amount of jobs? Those type questions now gave me a plan for the business to grow. And without having someone to help you provoke those thought processes, you won't have a plan of action, and therefore you will never take action. It gets so complicated in our head, but in reality, it's simple, but it stays complicated in our head, and we all deal with it. You're not alone. So reach out and find someone that you see that is successful in the business. Business fundamentals go across all industries. You've got to have marketing. You've got to get in front of your customers' eyes. You've got to have operational processes so that they have a guideline, a simple operational process, bullet point operational process. You've got to have the bookkeeping side. How do you make your collections? How long do you allow them to sit delinquent before you make the phone calls? When are those phone calls going to be made? What about on the marketing side, trying to get the sale? Do you follow up? How often do you follow up? Those things need to be in writing. How do you price your services? How do you price your products? Products are a little easier. You can have a price sheet. Well, actually, it's the same for a service. You make a price sheet. You're going to need some data to be able to accurately price your stuff and know that you are capitalizing on as much profits as you can. I had to start tracking how long my technicians were at a house cleaning per room or per square foot. And then at that point, I began to learn how long we're there, what that expense of labor was, an estimated expense of our other consumable goods like our chemicals. And then I had to also kind of figure out what my overhead was across the business, because you're buying equipment, you got maintenance, you've got repair, you've got staff answering the phone calls, you got staff that's invoicing and staff that's paying bills. All that's an overhead. So I figured out, hey, my overhead sits around 30% on average. And then I deduct my labor from it. Now I've got my net profit on that job. Am I happy with that net profit on the job? Does that get me to my goals? Am I on the low end of my market or on the high end of my market? Could I go get a job somewhere else and still make the same amount of money? Does it make sense to even be in business with that profit margin? If the answer is no, then you need to raise your prices until you get resistance. If you've got more work than you can service, you need to raise your prices to skim off and cherry pick the customers. Yes, you will lose some, but you will not lose them all. I'll give you an example in point. We do mold inspections, and we were at $150 a mold inspection. And I got to thinking about it. I was like, man, I've got a project manager here that I have put through school. He's got all of these certifications underneath him, this education that makes him a very reliable and profitable asset. And I'm pimping him out for cheap. So I sat there and said, okay, he's taking an hour. If he goes out here, does this inspection, he's there for an hour. Then he comes back. If there's a quote to write up for us to possibly get some work, there's roughly an hour left there. There's 2 hours of this highly trained individual, and we're charging $150 for this. That's not taking any expenses out. And so I was just like, we're not getting enough money for this guy's time. So I said, let's move it up. And then we got to thinking, and I heard somebody say, you really want to make more money, stop trying to increase your workforce, just increase the actual cost of your services or your products. And I was like, shit, I'm going to do it. So I decided to see if I kind of calculated, and I was like, I would be very happy if we're making this. So I said, let's start saying $450 for a mold inspection, because when you consider it, you've got 2 hours locked up on a highly trained individual, plus our overheads, our gas to get there, and anything else that's involved. So I got feedback after a week from my relationship manager, my scheduler, my coordinator. And as she was going through those phone calls and quoting those, she was getting a lot of resistance of, oh, that's too expensive. I can't afford that. So I said, okay, let's back it back down. Let's just increase it $100. So we went from $150 to $250. Boom. Nobody barked at it. Started booking them over and over and over again, just like we were at $150. Nobody blinked. I knew I went above the threshold, and I was back in the flow of where people's affordability mindset was. Now I've got $100 extra on each job. So what did that do? My expenses stayed the same, but my profits increased. My net profits increased per mold inspection at that point. And I was only getting those. Mold remediation is an expensive service. So if they can afford $250 and it's not a stretch for them, then they're going to be more likely to afford the actual service itself. Therefore, we were going to make even more revenue, because now our efforts weren't going to be in vain. We weren't just going out for inspections. We were going out for inspections, identifying what's going on, and then we were going to, on the back end, be able to service their issue and make even more revenue. We've got to see what we've already got in our hands, because you've already got gold sitting in your hands, but you've gotten so used to the day-to-day grind that you're caught up in the woods, you're in the weeds of it, and you've got to rise above and see the plot of land that you're on so you can start making decisions. Instead of fighting blades of grass to get to the next blade of grass, rise above it, and then you can see what's standing in the field. And you can start to move parts, and you can have better strategy of how you get to what portion of the field you want to get to. It's a game that we play. And it's easy to get caught up in the minutia of the day-to-day. And that's why it's so easy to break focus and think something else is greener on the other side. And if I could just do this, I would do better. And in reality, you've already got time invested that has built a unique ability. And if you invested just a little more time to increase that unique ability so that you were even more of an expert, then you would be able to command a higher price because you're bringing more value. Bring the value to the marketplace and you will get paid. The more value that you bring to the market, the more the market will pay you. It's as simple as that, and let's not complicate it any further. So specialize in something and stop working on the weaknesses and skill set and find somebody that's a specialty in that skill set. And then join up forces. I'm not saying give away equity in your business, but maybe you profit share. Maybe it's just a simple hire on a salary or an hourly pay scale. But look for those individuals that can complement you so that you can go farther and faster. Okay? Business is scary, but it doesn't have to be. That's why it's so important that you plug into a community and you get those positive reinforcements, because people that are doing well want to see others do well. People that are not doing well want to see others fail because it makes them better about themselves, makes them feel better about themselves. But those that are doing movement in the world, those that are making things happen, they want to see others do the same because their mindset is in an abundant mindset. It's not taking anything away from them if you start to do good, because they already feel good about themselves because they're making shit happen. And I want you to make shit happen. You have every capability of doing what you want to do in an amazing way, but you get distracted. It's just like I was talking about in my day-to-day. I'll sit there and be working on a task and think about another task that I should do and derail myself, and I broke production. And now to get refocused on the new task and then come back and focus again on my old task, I've lost time. And we all know that time is money. Time is valuable. We don't get any more time. Once it's gone, it's done. You can't rejuvenate it. So we got to make sure that we're utilizing our time at its highest capacity. So what do you take away from this today? What do you take away from this podcast? You take away of identify what you currently have going on and how can you better what you currently have. Stop trying to jump to something new and have to learn something else. You currently have something in your hands that you can better yourself in. And then you began to be able to charge more because now you are an expert. Don't break focus on something else thinking it's greener on the other side. I want you guys to live in success. I appreciate your time tuning in. If you don't have a community that you're plugged into or you want more community, then you need to check out Bigger Vision Facebook group. It is a free membership. We've got several hundred individuals that are in that group. And when you've got that many people assembled in one community, you've got multiple opportunities and eyeballs. So if you've got an issue, you can sit there and state a question and you're going to get an answer. Someone's going to say, damn, I just went through that. I know exactly how to fix that. Or, hey, I've got this resource that you're looking for. Let's get together. And then now you're creating relationships on the outside of this group. But it's because you got into this group, you plugged in and you began to be active. It allows you new opportunity, and now you're running with others and you can go far. So plug in there, ton of great content. We do weekly lives with all different types of subjects, talking about tax savings, talking about real estate, talking about business, talking about scaling, talking about health. It is about mindset, business, and investing. It's happening in that group, and it costs you nothing but your time and effort. So plug in. Let's grow together. Till next time, let's live in success.
This program is brought to you by thepodcastfactory.com.